Hooray, hurrah! Once again, the Greg Proops Film Club convenes here in Hollywood's most enchanting cinematic surroundings, the Los Feliz Theater, if you wish to pronounce all the consonants. I don't. Here for the Cinematheque, and tonight's showing at the Greg Proops Film Club, curated by my wife Jennifer, of the 1979 classic directed by Hal Ashby, starring Peter Sellers, Being There. Yeah. Good evening, film freaks and film fanatics, sophisticated hipsters and groove monkeys. I noticed that they were announcing before this show that there's shows in Westwood, and it occurred to me that hardly anyone in this room's ever probably been to Westwood. And that's what I love about you here in Los Feliz. If there's not a house of pies nearby, you will not go. And I think that's what makes you hold the line. If there's not a Little Dom's nearby, you're going to freak out. I wouldn't recommend Westwood if you weren't high. I mean, I'm just saying, it's better if you're high. It's near that big college that's out there, UCLA, and so you really have to be careful when you're on the streets, because it's full of buoyant young people who are getting an education. Go ahead and take the picture. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's program. I'm pretty excited about tonight's movie. And once again, Jennifer's picked a movie that is perhaps almost a little too cogent and a little too trenchant and a little too reflective of today's society in which we live. How many people by applause have seen this movie before? A smattering. So the rest of you, I won't divulge any of the plot or anything like that because there's no need to. You're going to see it real soon. But first, we're going to open up the globe of mystery and reach in for the drinks of enchantment. This is how we begin the evening here. It's important to stay hydrated. I was in the Valley yesterday doing a podcast. And if you'll forgive me, I'm going to quote the television show Entourage. I hope I can take you back 15 years or so to your Sunday night viewing. And in the television show Entourage, the character played by Kevin Dillon, Johnny Drama says, "Oh, bro, you know that I never go to the Valley unless it's between October and March." And I violated that by going in summer yesterday. And so I feel very, very comfortable being back over on this side and a lot safer, let's be honest. People say things like, well, you get more for your money in the Valley. Of what? That's what one must ask oneself when one's in the Valley. And then as soon as you get back over on this side, you're like, right. So there we are with the value judgments. You thought I could be parochial because I'm from San Francisco. I can be parochial block by block in Los Angeles. And thank you. For instance, there's a fruit stand about 2 blocks down here. And my wife and I were passing it tonight, and they were doing a fruit inspection, and she lost me for about an hour and a half. So, thank you. That was an ancient vaudeville joke. I'm just testing to see if you're out there right now. Because for me, I'm drinking water and I'm having fun, but I'm getting kind of a terrarium feel out there. So this picture was made by Hal Ashby. And I'm going to put Hal Ashby and hopefully challenge some of your horrible, bougie, preconceived notions about film that you absorbed somewhere along the line. There's a lot of great 70s directors, right? And then there's Friedkin. But there's a lot of great 70s directors, and they always get mentioned, you know, Scorsese and Coppola and whatnot. And in my opinion, Alan J. Pakula, Sidney Lumet, and let's get there, Hal Ashby. I'll put Hal Ashby's 70 resume against any 70s film director. There was a book that came out years ago called Raging Kittens and Licorice Boats or something, and it was very good. I know the name of it, you guys, by the way, but I just want you guys to stay as calm as you are right now, because laughter tends to throw me off in my comedy. Raging Bulls and Motorcycle, whatever it was. And it was about all the 70s and 60s outlaw movie directors, right, who were largely men, largely sexist, and mostly a drag, except for Spielberg, who was like going with a Boy Scout or whatever to the movies. And, I remember even Margot Kidder complained about how square Spielberg was. And so, but Hal Ashby comes off pretty well. First of all, he was a genius film editor, and he edited Heat of the Night for Norman Jewison. And Norman Jewison really helped him. And we've shown 2 Norman Jewison movies. We've shown Heat of the Night and Moonstruck, which give you an idea of the breadth of Norman Jewison's work. Although, to be very honest and to be very shallow, the Thomas Crown Affair with Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway, I could probably watch every day of my life there. If you want to know where I'm coming from intellectually, and the whole crowd's gone quiet. We've never seen it, Greg. It's got a dune buggy sequence and Steve McQueen wears white jeans. So that's the kind of movie I like. Where Faye Dunaway's got enormous false eyelashes, so enormous that you feel like fruit could be sliced if it got too close. Hal Ashby's movies that he made, we've shown 3. This is our 3rd Hal Ashby picture that we've shown. We showed Harold and Maude, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, and is a wonderful motion picture. He was not supposed to be the director of Harold and Maude. Colin Higgins, who wrote the movie, and was living in the pool house of a producer when he wrote it. They gave him the job directing it, and he lasted about a week. And then the studio freaked out and brought in Hal Ashby. And Hal Ashby's in a lot of his movies, by the way. I don't think he's in Being There, but he does do cameos in his movies. He's a big, long-haired hippie. Toward the end of his career, when he'd done a lot of drugs and wasn't gigging as much, he shaved his hair and his beard off and started wearing a blue blazer to Hollywood parties. Someone went, It wasn't supposed to be a mordant comment on the shallowness and unfairness of show business, but I guess it kind of came out that way. Speaking of show business, I drove by Paramount on the way here. So, yeah, it used to be a studio right here in Hollywood. In fact, maybe the only one that's left physically in Hollywood. And David Ellison, who was a noted filmmaker and lover of cinema, wonderful screenwriter, and my goodness, the things David Ellison hasn't accomplished in show business would fill an entire Bhagavad Gita. He told us last week that the whole Paramount Warner Brothers merger was going to be great for everybody. And what are we worried about? When rich people make decisions, we need to sit back a little bit. You know, lay back in your chaise lounge, cover yourself with olive oil, invite some otters to lick it off, and just enjoy a Mai Tai, because that's what's going to happen. It's all going to be good. The sea creature, Sissy SpaceX, the one who sends flying dumpsters into orbit and just hit the moon with one of his Waymo cars, he told us we're no longer going to need money one day. And I think the reason is because he's going to have it all. And then do a weird, jinky dance like your friends used to do when they'd smoke PCP. I'm sorry, this crowd is far too young for PCP. When they would take Molly and not have enough Gatorade. When you'd have too many Zimas. Am I getting close to anyone's age here? So Hal Ashby was very druggy and a wonderful filmmaker. And people compare him to other filmmakers, but I'm not going to. In 1970, The Landlord, then Harold and Maude, then The Last Detail. Shampoo, Bound for Glory, Coming Home and Being There are his 70s movies. So, yeah. If you have any notion that you're going to dissuade me that he's one of the great 70s filmmakers, 2 of those movies is enough. A bunch of them is a round grand slam. Or as we say in England, he hit for 6. So Shampoo I saw all of these movies in high school. And I was the high school film critic for my high school paper. I know this will surprise no one. That I was as annoying, as opinionated, wore glasses this thick, and my voice was in a slightly higher register some 50 years ago when I was in high school. Did you say 50? I said the 70s, bitches. And I don't remember reviewing it. I reviewed movies like The Reincarnation of Peter Proud with Michael Sarrazin, where he's reborn and then he comes back, but he's been reincarnated and stuff. Those are the kind of movies we used to. Everyone thinks because of Hal Ashby and Martin Scorsese that the 70s were full of really, really good movies. They were. There was also Convoy and Smokey and the Bandit 1 and 2. There was lots of stuff that wasn't what we would call high quality entertainment now. And I don't mean in an ironic way. I mean in a they were shitty movies. They were shitty. Laser Blast. Okay. because for every Star Wars, there were 47 movies in it that came out with sub-Star Wars plots. And for every Hal Ashby movie, there was 22 Hal Ashby movies that came out. So the Shampoo, we went and saw a million times in high school because it was so full of sex and drugs. And I was trying to get a handle on whether Warren Beatty was acting in the movie or he was just that way, which is, I think, the eternal conundrum of Warren Beatty. You can watch him in 1,000 movies and be like, is he going to act at any point, or are we just supposed to wait here till that kicks in? Because Warren Beatty will go for like an hour in a movie. And then you're like, certainly at some point, we're going to get something. Now, there's a couple of movies, right? What's the one with Natalie Wood, Jennifer? Splendor in the Grass. He's wonderful in Splendor in the Grass. And Shampoo is a perfect role for him because he plays a hairdresser who wants to be a grown boy. And it's kind of a Pinocchio thing or whatever. It didn't matter at all because it had Goldie Hawn and Julie Christie, and they were so fucking awesome in it. But this is the 70s, so we would go to the movies like 2, 3, 5, 10 million times a week, okay? And movies didn't cost that much. Like when Earthquake came out, speaking of shitty 70s movies, or when Earthquake came out, and by the way, Earthquake was, Lorne Greene played Ava Gardner's father, who was married to Charlton Heston. That's how good Earthquake was to jump out. Secondly, whenever the earthquake happened in the movie, all they had done was put speakers in the theater and turn them on so that the theater went like this every time there was the earthquake. And the price went from $2.75 to $3.50 to pay for the speakers. Now, of course, they would come to your house and make you download an app and say, do you wish to feel the speakers? And then when you press that button, there another caveat comes up that's 18 pages long and says, in the event that your life should carry on, we have your DNA count, and we noticed you're lacking in guanine in your second helix. So we would go see so when Shampoo wasn't, the movie that we would imitate the most was Chinatown with Faye Dunaway, because at the end of the movie she's shot, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. We're not showing it tonight, so come back on another night. And she leans against the horn like this, and we would drop our friends off when we were drunk and high, and when they got to the door, we would yell, Faye Dunaway at them, and then go against the horn of our cars to wake up their family and destroy their personal lives. And that was the kind of fun we had. So that movie, Dazed and Confused or whatever with Matthew McConaughey, complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. No one acted that way in high school. I took a survey of everyone who went to high school during that era, and no one acted that way. Only in that fucking movie, in that. Did Richard Linklater direct that? Whatever. He's okay, but that one, wow. First of all, we didn't spank each other and shit. And second of all, if there were 19-year-olds hanging around, it was creepy. That's a gibbon, or any small primate that lives in Indonesia. So thank you. Hal Ashby, I think, is an actor of rare sensitivity. Melvin Douglas, who plays the old man in this movie, won an Oscar for being in this movie. That's the kind of, like David Carradine played Woody Guthrie for him. Warren Beatty played a hairdresser for him. Jack Nicholson played an errant sailor, and Ruth Gordon played a Holocaust survivor who falls in and sort of have a romance, love affair, and an affair of love with an 18-year-old, all in his movies. And all of his movies really draw upon perception. What's right? What's wrong? What's honest? What isn't? Why are you doing what you're doing within the system that you're in? Almost every single one of his movies is a philosophical discussion. And this movie most of all, because it's called Being There. And when you see what happens, what transpires in the movie, you'll get the understanding of why it's called that. Now, in 1979, the thing that was the overwhelming, time-wasting, all-consuming void that we all sucked into was television, right? Now it's whatever, we know the deal. But obviously you'll be able to make this intellectual jump. Peter Sellers is absolutely the living vehicle for the vision of this movie. He read the book, which Hershey Kaczynski called a novel, and I read it in college. Novels have more than like 80 pages. And it doesn't cover a lot of, in any case, he read the book and he wanted to do it. But Peter Sellers often said about himself that he was a cipher. He never used the word. I have a couple of quotes here. In Nova magazine in 1969, Peter Sellers said, "When I look at myself, I see a person who strangely lacks what I consider the ingredients for a personality." Now, if you remember Peter Sellers, and I'm not here to denigrate him in any way. In fact, I am here to vaunt and vault Peter Sellers into your consciousness as someone that we knew from the time I grew up and started seeing pictures. And one of the first pictures my parents ever took me to see was The Pink Panther, which is the original Peter Sellers Clouseau movie. Now, he'd been a star in England and he'd made the Mouse movies and stuff like that. And he was just starting to be an international star and crack America. By the end of the 60s, he was so goddamn big in the United States and was sort of generally acknowledged. And I don't know, this is, for those of you who don't remember then or can't remember then, he was an insanely popular comedian worldwide. And he did broad characters, racistly broad characters, fantastically, hugely drawn characters, and insane slapstick, falling on the ground, hitting himself in the eye, flying out of windows, having karate fights. Like, he was the least restrained comic. Like, the antecedent, if Alec Guinness comes before him, who he worshipped, because Alec Guinness would do all these broad, morally ambiguous characters. Peter Sellers took that and almost lampooned the idea of it. In The Party, he's an Indian guy, and we spend the entire movie with him doing an Indian accent, wearing Indian makeup. This is the 60s, so revoke your sensibilities. And in fact, pretend that you're at the Patriot Games that happened this week. Or the Hunger Games, or whatever they were called. I didn't watch them. Mockingbird Jay or whatever. Anyway, and in all the Clouseau movies, he absolutely does the most pratfalls of all time. Well, by the time they got to this movie, right, and he kept saying this about himself, Kubrick put him in Lolita in a very quirky role where he's kind of a pervert. And it's not a big role. And Kubrick also put him in Dr. Strangelove and asked him to play 4 roles. Well, he plays the president, Muffley. And then I interviewed Bob Newhart years ago. And Bob Newhart said to me, and Jennifer, that Peter Sellers said to him, "Do you know that I'm doing you in Dr. Strangelove?" Because if you've ever seen the movie Dr. Strangelove, he's the president, and he has to call the premier of Russia and tell him that we're going to drop a nuclear bomb on Moscow. And he says, "Oh, hello, Dmitri. Hi. Yeah, no, I'm not just calling to say hi. I have a reason." And that's all of Bob Newhart's first album, right? And a lot of his albums is the one-way telephone conversation. And he also plays Dr. Strangelove, the insane German nuclear physicist, and he also plays Colonel Mandrake, who's trying to stop the whole horrible thing from happening. Then he made, after he became a star, a series of ungodly shitty movies, including like the Bobo and the World of Henry Orient, whatever. It's okay. He's not quite the star of it. Girl in My Soup. All these really not that great movies that didn't serve him that well. And then Blake Edwards convinced him, 10 years after Shot in the Dark, to come back and do another Pink Panther movie. And he made 2 or 3 Pink Panther movies in a row, like Revenge of the Pink Panther, Return of the Pink Panther, whatnot. And it made him a superstar again. So those are the movies that are leading up to this movie. And if you've ever seen any of the Pink Panther movies, broad doesn't begin to really describe the comedy in them. Jim Carrey looks subtle in a lot of ways compared to how broad some of the Peter Sellers movies are. And they are still hilariously funny. And he does a cod French accent through the whole movie. And he begged to do this picture. Because he really, I think, in his life, felt that he was filling all of his needs and desires by doing these different roles in these movies. The other quote was, "Most actors want to play Othello, but all I really wanted to play is Chance the Gardener, which is the character in this movie. I feel that the character of the story is all about not merely the triumph of a simple man and illiterate, it's God's message, again, that the meek shall inherit the earth. Now, Peter Sellers was nominated for an Oscar but didn't get one for this movie. And this movie is filled with great actors. Shirley MacLaine is in this movie, and Melvin Douglas, as I said. Jack Warden, who's often in 70s movies, and is always gruff and rough and ready. So, two things about Peter Sellers that I know. I was friends with Marty Feldman's widow, who was a woman named Loretta Feldman, who was a gorgeous woman and very funny in her own right. And her husband was Marty Feldman, the comedian from Young Frankenstein and all the Mel Brooks movies and whatnot. And Loretta Feldman spoke like Tallulah Bankhead, the actress. And she had an everlasting cigarette and a glass of champagne. And she would go, that. And hilarious, unbelievably nasty and opinionated, right? I saw the Lord of the Rings, I thought I was going to fucking die. What is Bilbo, some kind of lesbian? Like, she was really horrible. And hilariously funny. And she really talked that way. Oh, Greg, it was so funny. Oh, I know, yes. And her best friend was Anne Levy. Anne Levy was Peter Sellers' first wife, right? So Peter Sellers was married to Anne. They had some kids together, right? And Anne Levy told us this story. First of all, Loretta said to me, and I want you to know this about Peter Sellers, that when Marty Feldman died, she eventually talked to Mel Brooks, of course, and Gene Wilder and all the people that worked with him, and they were all nice. But she said the nicest person, two people, Michael Caine called her, and Peter Sellers fucking called her when he heard Marty Feldman died and said, "Lo, how are you?" And they had a long conversation. And then this one, Anne, whose name is Levy now, but when she was married to Peter Sellers, said they were in their mansion once outside of London. This is in the 60s, and this is the kind of person Peter Sellers was. And he was upstairs, and she was downstairs reading, and there was a knock on the door. She went and answered the door, and it was a telegram. And she opened up the telegram, and it was from Peter Sellers, and it said, "Peter would like his tea now." And now I give you from 1979, the majestic Peter Sellers in Hal Ashby's classic Being There.